The Tampa Bay Lightning enter a critical junction in their season following a couple tough losses and a potential injury to Nikita Kucherov. On this episode, you'll answer the question why I am concerned about Cam Atkinson returning to the Tampa Bay Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Josh Sperber here to welcome you to another episode of Locked On Lightning, and I want to thank you all for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Because right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And let's get started by talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Philadelphia Flyers. The next game that the Bolts will play. They will be in Philadelphia for the first time this season and the only time this season. And then Philly comes back to Tampa on St. Patrick's Day after hopefully a Lightning win. And we're going to talk about just how important I think these next two games are to the Tampa Bay Lightning a little later on. But I think a quick preview of what we're going to talk about is this is a game that the Tampa Bay Lightning absolutely need to win. But that we're going to talk about later. It's still important to be said now because the Lightning are coming off two of maybe their most frustrating games of the season. One goal scored in the last two for Tampa Bay, and they have been outscored 8-1 in those last two games against divisional opponent, the Boston Bruins, and the Carolina Hurricanes, another one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. And obviously, the status of Nikita Kucherov is something that is important and something that is still in question. The Lightning don't know if Kucherov is going to play, and we'll try and update you guys on that as we can before the game. But the Lightning haven't played the Flyers since November, and that was an early edition of games the Lightning should have won. They were playing a Flyers team that at that point was one of the worst in the league. And frankly, they're still on that level. But they were winning for almost the entire game. They scored a goal within the first minute. That was Nikita Kucherov on one of the prettiest goals I've seen this season. And that still stands from November 7th. But a late third period goal forced it into a shootout where the Flyers scored both of their goals and the Lightning did not. Lightning only shot 23 times that game. So I think that's the first thing that's going to be key for tonight's game is just getting open more, getting the puck in open space and shooting it. I mean, plain and simple. They're playing a team that is 28th in the league in terms of goals allowed per game, almost 3.5 goals allowed, and also are 15th on the power play. The closest these two are in terms of stats are in faceoffs, both hovering around the 50% marker. And the goals scored and goals allowed are probably the biggest difference other than the power play, where the Lightning have 11% higher power play. And they also average almost a full goal per game more and a full goal allowed per game less. 0.3 goals allowed per game fewer than the Flyers. Lightning are 7th in the league in that category. 3.5 goals per game. That is good for second in the NHL. And obviously, getting goals, most important. And the Lightning, I think, have just not been able to do that the last couple of games. Maybe it's just been sloppy play in transition. Maybe it's just been they're not getting the right shots. But again, I just don't see a lot of shots that the Lightning take that I look at after the fact and think, why did they just shoot that? Or that was just not a smart shot. That's just not the way the Lightning play their game. They're just a smart offensive team, and usually they're getting the right shots off. But I mean, I just don't think it's been that simple these last couple of games for Tampa Bay. I think it's more than just, finding the right shots and everything like that. I mean, it's the link up play that's needed some help. It's the transition defense that has not been great. There have just been bits and pieces of the Lightning game that have been kind of dropping off, and it's been pretty random. There's just no rhyme or reason to what's gone on for the Lightning in the last couple of games. I mean, the showing against the Bruins at home was a disaster, and it wasn't much better against Carolina, completely bailed out by an absolute snipe of a goal, with Gonzalez going top shelf for the Lightning's only goal of the game. And, it's a great highlight, but one goal against a team like Carolina isn't enough. It might be enough against a team like Philadelphia, but I don't think that is something that the Lightning can chance, especially with the Flyers having Matvei Michkov, who is one of the front runners currently for Rookie of the Year. And Michkov was not in the lineup the last time these two teams played. And that, I think, could be a bit of a wild card because he has been outstanding in his rookie season for Philadelphia. And the 20-year-old first rounder in 2023 has given a Flyers team which has not been successful in the past couple of years. He's given them hope. I mean, they have a bona fide star forward on their hands. 20 goals, 27 assists through 64 games. And he scored in one of his first two games, 4 days after his NHL debut. He became the second fastest Flyer to get a multi-goal game. And with him in the lineup, that can certainly change things. And he typically plays at right wing where the Lightning sit Nikita Kucherov. That we're going to talk about a little bit more in the next segment because his status for tonight's game is uncertain. He left in the third period of the battle against Carolina back on Tuesday, about halfway through, and did not return. And that's always concerning when you have a star player leaving early and not coming back. But I think the Lightning certainly have the offensive firepower to not replace Kucherov, but, make up for the fact that he is potentially going to be missing a game. You look back to the last game he missed against Montreal back in February. That turned out to be one of the Lightning's best games. Again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next segment, but it's still something that is important to note for Tampa Bay. I mean, they could potentially be going into a game without their best player, and that just means that they're going to have to have guys step up. But it's the transition play, it's the link-up play. It's just moving the puck up the ice that has not gone the Lightning's way in the last couple of games. Their passing has not been at the level that we've come to expect, because any issues it seemed like the Lightning had with passing, for the most part, had vanished over the month of February when the Lightning had been on their best run of the season, playing their best hockey, and it seemed to start off that way in March. They got the win against the Capitals, the loss against the Panthers. They fought off a subpar defensive game against the Sabres after winning in Columbus following a tight loss to the rival Panthers, but then the wheels fell off over the weekend against Boston, and that carried into Carolina. And something that we're going to continue to talk about is that the Lightning cannot keep letting this happen, and they have to nip this losing streak in the bud right now. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later. But first, still concerns over a potential Nikita Kucherov injury. So a familiar face will come back to the Tampa Bay Lightning ahead of Thursday night's matchup against the Philadelphia Flyers. You just realized that your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and helps you find the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need the right hire like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs came in handy. They made sure that my post was seen by the right candidates right now. So you can speed your hiring process up with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed here on Locked On Lightning. Terms and conditions apply, but if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term financial goals. Managing money with your partner is now smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year with Monarch Money. As we mentioned, the status of Nikita Kucherov was thrown in question after he left the game against the Carolina Hurricanes around midway through the third period. Kucherov has been goalless in the last two games, but he is the only Lightning player with a goal against the Flyers in 2024 and 2025 during that NHL season. The last game Kucherov missed was February 9th, a showdown against the Montreal Canadiens that the Lightning won by a total of 5-3. For this instance of replacing Kucherov, the Lightning have called up veteran Cam Atkinson, who has skated in over 800 career games and last played with the Tampa Bay Lightning at the beginning of March, playing a little over 9 minutes on the ice against his original and former team, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, Cam Atkinson gets a reunion against the team he played for over the last two seasons, the Philadelphia Flyers, where he scored a total of 26 goals and handed out 42 helpers in 143 games over two seasons with Philadelphia. And I don't want to try and frame this segment as hating on Cam Atkinson, because I like Cam Atkinson. I think he's a good player. He provides a solid presence in the locker room, just a guy who keeps things light and who seems to be well liked by everyone. And just having a good guy in the locker room is always helpful to kind of boost morale. And I think with the Lightning struggling as they have been lately, it could be exactly what they need. Maybe not the impact player on the ice that he once was, but he's certainly a good veteran locker room presence and a guy who has been around the league for a very long time, and I think can be somewhat of a stabilizing force in the Lightning locker room as they continue on this road trip. And obviously, the Lightning want to see Atkinson get sent back down to the AHL because it likely means that Nikita Kucherov will be healthy. I think that Kucherov's injury status necessitated this move because the Lightning aren't sure if he can make the turnaround after, a day and a half later when he went to the bench and didn't return against Carolina. And I mentioned the last time the Lightning played without Nikita Kucherov. He hasn't missed that many games this season, but maybe the biggest one that he's missed so far was against the Canadiens on February 9th. Lightning had a 3-game win streak going, and during the pregame warmups, Kucherov had to leave the ice early. He did not return and did not play in the game. And this game in February against the Canadiens was big for a lot of reasons. The Lightning were starting that win streak, and they had already lost 2 games to Montreal, a divisional opponent, so far this season, including a tough 3-2 loss to the Habs just a few weeks earlier in Montreal. Now, minutes before game time, they lose their best player and maybe the best player on the planet. In about 10 minutes in that game, Cam Atkinson had an assist and was one of the many Lightning players to step up. Nick Paul scored a goal. Zemgus Girgensons put up his first goal of the season. Brandon Hagel and Jake Gensel each handed out 2 assists. Anthony Cirelli and Victor Hedman each with a goal and an assist. And you might think it's a little bit random to mention that game or coincidental, talking about Nikita Kucherov and that being the last game he missed. But I bring that up because that's the kind of game the Lightning need right now. That game against the Montreal Canadiens was some adversity coming off a back-to-back, and then right before the game got started, you lose your best player, and the Lightning shook that off. And the Lightning are certainly going through adversity right now. 2, arguably, of their worst games of the season coming back-to-back. Once against the divisional opponent Bruins, who they play again on Saturday. That's something we're going to talk about in depth tomorrow. And then, of course, in tonight's game against the Flyers. And, obviously you compare that Canadiens game to this game, and it seems like it's apples and oranges. The Canadiens game turned out to be the middle of a win streak. And this game, the Lightning are trying to stop from creating a losing streak. So, you got to just stop the bleeding right now if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning. And though Cam Atkinson hasn't been exactly a needle mover on offense in 37 games, he has 3 goals and 5 assists. Honestly, I think 8 points in about 8 minutes per game over 37 games, really not bad for a guy like Atkinson. I think for what the Lightning signed him for, they signed him for a veteran's minimum contract almost. I think he's done a really good job when he's been with Tampa Bay. Again, that locker room presence that he provides just seems to be a guy who can just unite the room and, keep everybody loose. But also, as a veteran, he can certainly help out some of the younger guys. And I think that the Lightning calling him up, even if he ends up getting sent down before the game, which seems unlikely, but even if that does happen, just having him up for, a couple minutes of practice, a little bit on the road trip, whatever it is, just having an extra body there obviously is helpful with the injury. And I'm certainly not saying that Atkinson can replace Nikita Kucherov, because I don't think there's a player in the NHL that I'd rather have in my lineup than Nikita Kucherov. But it's veterans like Atkinson, it's players like Atkinson who can come in and really help a team just kind of check itself a little bit, just kind of calm down and right the ship. And I think we've seen Atkinson do that a couple times over the course of the season. And I certainly hope that is what we're going to see again when the Lightning take on the Philadelphia Flyers later again tonight. And Cam Atkinson is likely going to be playing. The Lightning still hoping that they'll get back Nikita Kucherov. But one thing that will not change before this game against the Flyers, and even before Saturday's rematch against the Boston Bruins following a disappointing loss at home a week ago, means just one thing. The next two games for the Tampa Bay Lightning are games that the Lightning cannot lose. And I know I've said this before, but this time it means a little bit more. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. And the FanDuel app is easy to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly without any waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And FanDuel, you can also bet NHL, including the Tampa Bay Lightning. Don't know why you'd want to bet on any other NHL team, but the Lightning go in as the favorites. -1.5 against the spread, with an over-under that they're favored to hit of 5.5 against the Philadelphia Flyers. So the Lightning are the favorites. You can check out the game odds and so many more bets on FanDuel.com for tonight's game between the Lightning and the Flyers, if you want to put some money where your mouth is in support of the Lightning. So I made a pretty bold statement in the last segment that the Tampa Bay Lightning cannot lose these next two games. And it's something I've said before. I feel like a must-win game is something that, frankly, maybe I overuse. But regardless, overused or not, this time it is very real. Something that we've talked a lot about over the course of this episode is the subpar play of the Lightning over the last two games. They have played the Bruins and the Hurricanes, both solid teams, both teams that are in playoff contention right now, though the Bruins a bit more on the outside looking in, and the Hurricanes in a firm second place in the Metropolitan Division. So two solid teams, both with winning records, but both just duds of a game from the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think the Lightning, and I certainly hope that this won't happen, but I don't think the Lightning will go lower than that 4-0 loss against the Boston Bruins on Saturday. And in that game, they need redemption, period. The Bruins absolutely rocked them the last time the Lightning came to Boston. And especially after this loss, the Lightning can't afford a series loss to Boston, because right now the Bruins have 68 points. They're coming off a tough loss. It looked like a tough loss, but it was a comeback win. They came off a tough loss to Carolina before the Lightning game, and then a comeback win over the Panthers could be in the middle of starting something for Boston. I mean, that is, that's a kind of win that can turn a team's season around. And it put the Bruins up at 68 points. A game, the Red Wings have a game in hand, so that makes Boston 7th in the Atlantic Division. But when you look at the division, Bruins aren't that far out, with 2 games played fewer than the Senators and Lightning this year. Senators, though, in 4th place with 73 points. The Bruins are just 5 points behind them. And there's still time to make those games up, especially since the Bruins play the Senators tonight. So the result of that game is going to have a lot more weight on the Boston and Tampa Bay game on Saturday, as will the result of this game against the Flyers, because the Lightning are a playoff team. And I don't like talking about chalk, going about, favorites on paper versus actual performance on the ice. But by just about every single metric, there's no reason the Lightning should have lost to the Flyers once this season. I mean, the Flyers also on the outside looking in, the Blue Jackets 2 games in hand over Philadelphia, who were in 7th in the Metropolitan Division. They're at 62 points, a losing record of 27, 31, and 8. The Blue Jackets 31, 25, and 8. And it doesn't seem like they're losing their grip on the 4th spot in the Metropolitan Division anytime soon. And I got to give it up for Columbus for, the spirit of Johnny Gaudreau inspiring their magical season. And it's truly a remarkable story. The Flyers looking to ruin that. And I mean, a win against Tampa Bay could certainly ignite something for Philly, especially since the Flyers have lost their last 5 games. And that's the main reason that the Lightning need to win this game. First off, the Lightning already lost a game against the Flyers. That was pretty unacceptable at the beginning of the season. That was I think I called that one a must-win game because that continued a losing streak for the Lightning. This would really start a losing streak, as it would be the 3rd straight loss if the Flyers come out on top tonight against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it would be embarrassing for a playoff team and a squad that I believe will be firmly entrenched as a dark horse Stanley Cup contender come playoff time. A season series defeat to a team like the Philadelphia Flyers, who are in 7th place in the Metropolitan Division and surpassing expectations. A season series loss, losing 2 out of 3 at the least to the Flyers since they're back at Amalie Arena on Monday. Losing 2 out of 3 games would not look good for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's just not the team that they are. They're a team that should be able to beat teams like Philadelphia, and it would be a kind of stepping stone to more success, hopefully, against the Bruins, which I believe is an even more important game than the one against Philadelphia, because it would hand Boston the season series, as it's the last time those two teams will face off over the course of the season. And you always want to avenge your worst loss of the year. And the Lightning, the last 2 games against Boston, were not the best of the Tampa Bay Lightning. The win against Boston on January 9th was one of their better games, but the last 2 games, it has been 10-2 Bruins combined against the Lightning, and that is a wrong that frankly needs to be righted on Saturday. But it all starts tonight. The Lightning need to prove that they can win these important games on the road, and though it doesn't seem like a Flyers game is that important, not exactly a rival of the Lightning, and certainly don't look like a playoff contender right now. But the Lightning right now are under 500 on the road and getting themselves back on track with a road win. Is it a big road win against a contending team? No, but it's a win that a playoff team needs to get. The strong playoff team beats the team at the opposite ends of the standing from them. And that's what the Lightning need to do. They got to start with that against Philly, get some confidence, get them back on the winning train, and then take that momentum into Boston on Saturday. Plain and simple. That is what the Lightning need to do. And it's got to start in Philadelphia. They might not have Nikita Kucherov, but they've got a little bit more time to plan for it. And they're going to have some guys step up if Kucherov is unable to go. We will try and give you an update on that on our X account at LO_Lightning. Please give us a follow, and we'll have Lightning updates for you as much as we can. But until then, I want to thank all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter. with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And wherever you found this podcast episode, please give us a like, a follow, a subscribe. We really appreciate your guys' support as we do this show for you. So once again, thank you again for tuning in. I'm Josh Sperber, and I wish you a happy Thursday, and go Bolts. Have a great day, everyone.